All right, shalom, shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, honor, and glory unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rachakwadash. Double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone, who rule very well, very beautifully. Double salutations be unto the Akim, out here pushing this gospel and truth and in sincerity to the best of their ability, given to them by Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai. Peace, blessings, and salutations be unto the elect scattered abroad. May the election of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Lord willing, fall upon your houses. Amen. We out here another week through the grace and mercy of the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, and his only beloved begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, right? To continue to come out here week in and week out, day in and day out, to continue to prophesy the downfall of this wicked and adulterous and evil fucking rulership, man, right? Which we are, again, we're at the end of this rulership, right? We're at the end of Esau's reign, if you will, right? This is Job chapter 14 and verse 5. It says, seeing his days are determined, the number of his months are with thee. Thou hast appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. And we understand that the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, right, through his only beloved begotten Son, has ultimately, throughout the ages, right, have removed, certain kings out of power, right? Once they were put into power, they ruled for a certain time or a time limit, and then they were ultimately removed out of power, and then the next kingdom was ultimately set up, right? We know that, right, by reading in Daniel's, the second chapter, right, verses 21, it says, I'll start at verse 20. It says, Daniel answered and said, blessed be the name of the Most High forever and ever, for wisdom and might are his. And he changeth the times and seasons. He removeth kings and setteth up kings. He giveth wisdom unto the wise and knowledge to them that know understanding. So again, right, ultimately going into the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahweh Shai, the Heavenly Father, Yahweh, through his only beloved begotten Son, Yahweh Shai, setting up, certain, people to rule for a time period. And then what does he do? He brings them down and sets up another rulership. As we've seen, time and time again throughout history, right? The Assyrians, the Babylonians, the Medo-Persians, right? The Greeks, the Romans, so on and so forth, and again, right, we're at the time, Esau being that last, heathen rulership, being, established, right? We're at the end of it, and the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah has given us many different signs, right, to ultimately, know that this place is done for, right? They I did a lesson on it not too I want to say maybe a little less than a week ago. I want to say like about 4 or 5 days ago. I did a lesson on that parade that Trump was ultimately going to have set up, and they were rehearsing and they were doing, their little, dances and whatnot, right? And it was for the, the year 250, parade or whatever you want to call it, man, or a festival or some shit. And as they were, rehearsing and going into, their dances and the music that was playing, and the stage started falling apart, right? The stage started falling apart, right, in the middle of their rehearsal, And one that's ultimately been going around amongst the body is the fact that, you had this man that was, basically parachuting in, right, to this rally or whatever you want to call it, and he had under him, he had a long string, right, with a weight at the end. And then you had the American flag flying behind him. Well, as he was coming in, it ultimately got caught. Matter of fact, for those that haven't seen it, I was watching it again this, earlier this morning, right? Again, that's another sign, right, that this place is going down. That was a sign that Yahweh Bashim Yahweh Shai, is bringing this place down. Let's see if I can find a little short. 'Cause that's what it was. It was a little short. It wasn't like a lands and against great kingdoms. One more look, amplified version. This is GMS Inquire Early, right? He was doing a lesson on it. He showed the video, right? The dude with the flag. And the prophets who before me and before you from ancient times prophesied against many lands and against great kingdoms of war and of disease and of disasters and of virulent disease. And that's a spirit that that we pulled that up, right? The brother doing GMS Inquire Early, he brought out what is that? Jeremiah 28:8. Matter of fact, we'll grab that. This is Jeremiah chapter 28. and verse 8, it says, the prophets that have been before me and before thee of old prophesied both against many countries and against great kingdoms of war and evil and of pestilence, man. And this is exactly what we're doing through the Spirit, man. Right? We're telling y'all that the Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shai is going to bring this place down, man. You know, bring this so-called great kingdom down. Right? America for so long, right, has been in rulership, has been over these nations, right? And these nations, right, will ultimately come, you know, they'll leave their home country, come to America, you know, believing that America is this, you know, this land of gold and you know, milk and honey and so on and so forth. You know, they'll come here, they'll set up shop, and they'll send that money back home, right? And this is how these nations, right, these people have ultimately gotten their wealth, you know, is by getting in bed with America, man. But see, this is the sinful kingdom that the Bible speaks of, man, and that the Lord Yahweh Bashim El Shai is going to destroy it, and we're seeing it, right? We're seeing the Lord ultimately destroy this rulership, man. You know, really from the inside out, right? Dealing with, you know, its monetary, you know, its currency, right? Dealing with the spirit within America, you know. Hey, that whole, you know, American or patriot spirit, that shit is gone, man. Here in America, that shit is over. It's done with. You know, the Lord is destroying this place, man. Let's grab that. In Isaiah, we brought this out many times, and this is more relevant now than you know, any time prior. You know, because again, the spirit, right? You had people basically, you know, because you know, I went outside and I was, you know, looking at, you know, these people when the fireworks, bro, there was hardly anybody doing fireworks, man. Hardly anybody was doing fireworks. You might see a few here, there, and there, you know, but you ain't finna see much. You know, my apartment complex got, you know, hundreds of people in it, man. But we're talking about maybe one or two families, three families, maybe, you know, maybe at, you know, at most, right? We're doing fireworks, man. You know, so it's like, man, the spirit that's here in America, man, is over. You had a article, I did a lesson on it as well, you know, going into that, you know, you said it was about 50 or 58% of people saying they're not going to celebrate, you know, the 4th of July, the fireworks, the celebration, the barbecue, so on and so forth. And 38% of that 58% said that what, right, that they're pessimistic, right, about America's future, man. When you ultimately go into, you know, just putting in my own words, when we go into that word, you know, pessimistic, it basically looks, you're looking for the bad in things, you know, right? Being versus being optimistic, right? You're looking for the good, you know. These people saying they're pessimistic about the future of America, man. You know, showing you these people don't, they know this place is going down. People can sense it, you know. But see, the prophets, right, starting with the elder apostles of Great Millstone on down, right, into, you know, Great Millstone affiliate camps and so on and so forth, right? Those who truly have this truth. Hey, we've been telling y'all for years this place, the Lord was going to bring this place down, man. Right? This is Isaiah 24 and verse 7. It says, the new wine mourneth, the vine languisheth, and all the merry-hearted do sigh, right? These people are in a state of mourning, right? These people are in a state of depression, being stressed out. Bills are going up, you know, cost of living is going up. You know, they're talking about, you know, you know, up in the tariffs on certain countries and whatnot, which is only going to make things worse, right? That the heat wave that's coming through America, you know, really all over the world, right? But America's feeling it, you know, really bad. So it's talking about the southwestern part of America, right? Hasn't had a drought this bad in over 130 years. You know, this is what America is being hit with, man, right? Which is affecting the crops, it's affecting the animals, right? The livestock, you know, which is affecting these supermarkets. It's affecting, you know, people's electricity bills. You know, they're having to pay more just to stay cooler, you know. So this right here, man, America's getting hit from all different directions, man, right? It says, verse 8, Isaiah 24, verse 8, call law, 1044, call law Yahweh Shemel Shai, right? It says, the mirth of Taberah ceaseth, the noise of them that rejoiceth, the joy of the harp ceaseth, right? There's, hey, man, you don't really see these people, you know what I mean, playing, you know, used to hear when I was a little kid, man, you know, you could walk down the street, man, people open their front doors, you know what I mean? They got music blasting, people having fun, you know, people, you know, trying to, you know, have, you know, fun with the so-called life that they live here, man. You don't see that shit no more, man. Kids don't let their kids, you know, people don't let their kids run outside anymore. You know, they keep their kids all cooped up, you know. You don't really have too many people, like on a Sunday like this, man. You would have, back in the day, 15 years ago, man, you would have, barbecues every so often, people gathered up. And people don't do that shit no more, man. They're seeing that the spirit within America, right, is dropping, right, is gone. That joy, that mirth, that shit's gone, man. It says they shall not drink wine with song. Strong drink shall be bitter to them that drink it. The city of confusion, right, which is talking about America, right? Babylon, right? The root word of Babylon goes back to Babel, which means confusion, right? Which this is a place of confusion, man. You got men trying to be women, women trying to be men, right? You got women running the households. This place is fucking completely upside down. It's confusing. You got 70 something or 80 something fucking genders now, right? People can walk around and they talk about they a dog or they a pig or whatever the fuck, man, and you can get in trouble if you don't ultimately, treat them as whatever they identify or address them as however they identify. That shit's fucking bugged out, man. But that's what here in America, man. Lord gave them up to, strong delusions, man. Strong delusions and vile affections. That's what these people are in, It says the city of confusion is broken down. Every house is shut up that no man may come in. It says there is a crying for wine in the streets. All joy is darkened. The mirth of the land is gone. So this place spiritually, right, economically, right, financially, right, is just done. Right. The Lord is destroying this place from the inside out. You got other countries, right? That these countries that America has been in bed with, right, for so long. Hey, they're no longer doing, business with America, right? Saudi Arabia is saying that America can't use, its bases, right, when it comes to this war with, Iran, right? More and more nations that have been allied with America, and they're starting to turn on America, man. Not using the dollar, right? Ditching the dollar, which again, right there shows you that America is just done, right? Again, from the inside out, right? Let's grab this in Isaiah 47 in verse 1. It says, "Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon," right? We're speaking about America, right? America being that virgin because no war has touched, American soil. Yeah, you had the Civil War, but we talking about by these foreign nations, coming and attacking America like America has done, in the Vietnam War over there in, Iraq and, Afghanistan and stuff like that, right? Actual wars, right? Like you see what's going on between Russia and Ukraine, right? None of that has hit here in America, man, but soon it will, It says, "Come down and sit in the dust," right? O virgin daughter of Babylon, sit on the ground. There is no throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for thou shalt no more be called tender and delicate. Right, America, you ain't got no more power. Right, Esau, your rulership is over. Right, we understand that Esau's rulership, right, ultimately, basically lives through America. Because America is how he's gotten his riches. It's how he's gotten, and spread, that net upon the world, right? You use Babylon, right, to spread that confusion, right? That deception, that he's ultimately, again, that going back to that wine, right? His philosophy, right? That Roman philosophy, right? He spread, across the world, right? To make him seem as, have these people, look at him as if he's some type of, God or, some type of righteous person when he's not. He's the wicked that the Bible speaks of, man. So as we see, Babylon, right? The power, of Babylon over these different nations, over, the minds of these people starting to wane, right? That shows you that Esau, Edom, his power is done, right? He's hit the limit, right? Hey, the Lord is finna bring this devil down quickly, man. It says, take the millstone and grind mill, uncover the locks, make bare the leg, uncover the thigh, pass over the rivers. Thy nakedness shall be uncovered, yea, thy shame shall be seen. I will take vengeance, and I will not meet thee as a man. Right, and Esau's being revealed at an all-time high. At an all-time high. Right, we starting with the EP Steam files. Right, all of the, and really he's been, the wicked and evil shit that he's been, doing. Right, it really since this truth, right, came back into the earth, right, through, Abba Bivens, man, going back into 1969, 1970, you know, who we believed right through the spirit is, Elijah the prophet, man, coming back, in the reincarnation, man. That's when Esau started to really be revealed, man, is when this truth started to come out, right? And then just as time went on, right, more and more information, right, continued to come out, right, until everybody sees Esau for who he is, man. I was at another spot before I came over here, right, which is, Lord will, this is gonna be, my new spot. Lord had me dust my feet off on that other location. I came over here, Lord will, I'll be over here for a while, but nonetheless, right, there's a lot of information, right, that's been coming out. I was actually over at another spot before I came over here, just kind of scoping it out. And I was overhearing, like it was like looked like three, so-called white homeless people, man, and they were talking about, what they're doing with the AI data centers, right? The Neuralink, what they plan on doing. They were talking about this, this dystopia. And I was just overhearing a very small piece of their conversation. As I was walking by, I was looking around, just kind of, listening in the background, right? And they were ultimately talking about this dystopia that ultimately they're trying to set up. And then, yesterday I overheard, a group of Edomites talking about, they're playing some Edomite woke song or some shit like that, man. And he made mention, how, children are being raped, right? But nobody's being arrested. Children are being molested, but nobody's being arrested. You know what I mean? And then I heard that song and I was like, damn, that's heavy. And then you had these Edomites turn around and talk about, yup, yeah, you know what I mean? Agreeing with that shit, like as if they mad about it. So it's like everybody knows, man. About Esau and his wickedness, right? And the wickedness that he's ultimately been doing and trying to hide for ages, man. Esau been trying to hide it, but see, you can't hide, your wickedness, man, right? You devils, you can't hide it, man. The Lord is bringing that, bringing it out, as we read, what is that in Luke 12:2, it says, for there is nothing covered that shall not be revealed, neither hid that shall not be known. So, hey, you damn devil, hey, the Lord is bringing it out, man, which is, again, is a sign, right? That's a sign. One of the signs that we were given that we would know the end of this devil's rulership. How would we know that this devil's at the end of his rulership, right? Was that 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 3? It says, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come. That day is talking about, Yahweh Shai cracking the sky, delivering the elect, and establishing a righteous rulership here on earth, right? It's talking about that day, right? That's the time it's talking about. So for that day shall not come, except they're coming and falling away first, which happened, right? The Israelites falling away from their power, right? Going into captivity, all the curses, Deuteronomy 28th chapter, verses 16 on down, coming upon them, right? Coming upon us, right? It says, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. And what? That's happening. And that's been happening, at an all-time high. So, hey, that shows you right there that Esau his rulership is over, right? These so-called white folks, man, continuing to sit here and steal these children and do whatever they do with these children, right? Esau's ability to deceive the people, his ability to, continue to, have rulership, that shit's over, man. That shit is over. We see it, right? Because again, right, going back to that dude that was on that parachute flying by, and what did it say? It lashed onto him and slammed him down, man. I don't know what happened. I think dude got hurt, but that shit looked, bro, you're high up in the sky, man. You're above a tree, and you're probably another 15 feet above a tree. Your shit gets caught, and you have to fall all the way down, which is spiritual, man. That's very spiritual. Dude got hurt. That shit looked violent. And will the scriptures say, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrust down, man. Matter of fact, let's grab that. Revelations 18 and verse 20. Rejoice over her, thou heaven, and ye holy apostles and prophets, for the Most High hath avenged you on her. And a mighty angel took up a stone like a great millstone and cast it into the sea, saying, thus with violence shall that great city Babylon be thrown down and shall be found no more at all. Right. And that's ultimately what, is the end goal for America. Right. We see that America internally, right, is being destroyed, right, spiritually, economically, socially, financially, you know, that Babylon, grip on the world, man, is every finger is being pried back, until that grip is completely gone, right? To a certain point, America still has that power, to a certain degree. But again, we're seeing that, Babylon, America, right, losing that power, which means Esau's losing that power as well. People looking at Donald Trump like, hey, this nigga's a fool, which he is. He's a fucking fool, man. These Edomites, man, they're being found out that they're not very fucking bright people, man. They're not the righteous people that the Bible speaks of, right? That they portray themselves to be. No, they're being found out, right? Their shame is being seen, man. Which eventually is going to lead to these nations, ultimately shooting these missiles right upon America, Babylon the Great, right? Why do you think they're creating these nuclear missiles, man? Why do you think that they're mass producing these nuclear missiles? Let's grab this. In Isaiah, what is that, 54 and verse 16, right? It says, behold, right, I have created the smith that bloweth the coals in the fire, and that bring forth an instrument for his work. And I have created the waster to destroy, right? Yahweh Shemel Shai ultimately put it on, Esau, Edom, right? His scientists and his engineers and whatnot, right? To go and create, these extremely powerful bombs, right? Called the atom bomb, the K bomb, the hydrogen bomb, the ICBM nuclear missile, right? To create these weapons, right? To do what? To destroy, right? To destroy who? To destroy America, man. Because again, we understand, right? The Bible says it, right? That the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shai is going to destroy America, right? AKA Babylon the Great, that sinful kingdom, right? Amos 9 and verse 8, it says, behold, the eyes of the Lord Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shai upon the sinful kingdom. We're talking about here in America. America is the epicenter of wickedness in the earth. You can go and ask these random people, right? Do you believe that America, is wicked or evil? And majority of these people, brothers have done it. Brothers have done videos, right? Or we be doing street teachings. People walk by, we'll randomly ask them questions, That'll be one of the questions. Hey, man, do you believe that America is going in the right direction? Do you think that America is evil? It's like, and most of these people will say, yeah, This is, again, America is the epicenter, right? Which when you go into that word epicenter, it means the actual most central point, right? The cause or the root, of whatever it may be. Whether you drop a rock in water, boom, the epicenter is where the rock hit, boom, and then it creates the waves. America is the epicenter, right, of wickedness in the earth, right? America was that, that rock being dropped, and the wickedness, right, just ultimately kept spreading and kept spreading and kept spreading, right? So as we see right here, 2 Edges 15 chapter, for wickedness hath exceedingly polluted the whole earth, right? And it was forwarded through, America, Babylon the Great, right? Esau being, this being Esau's, cash cow, or his, his home base, if you will, his HQ, using America to push that wine, So this is talking about America, right? It says, and I will destroy it from off the face of the earth, saving that I will not utterly destroy the house of Jacob, saith the Lord. So the Lord had these nuclear missiles, right, being created by these different nations to do what? To destroy America, destroy Babylon the Great. And there's nothing that, man, there's nothing that you can do, right? There's nothing that America can do, these American people, the American president, right, that they can do, right, to ultimately save this place, man. It's already written that this place will be destroyed, via ICBM nuclear missile, man. The destruction of America is written, and we know that, that the Lord is not a man that he should lie, nor the son of man that he should repent. This is Numbers, what is that, 23 and verse 19. It says the Most High, Numbers 23:19. It says the Most High is not a man that he should lie, neither the son of man that he should repent. Hath he said, and shall he not do it? Or hath he spoken, and shall he not make it good? Right. So the Lord ultimately, when he speaks, that you best believe, as you read in Isaiah the 55th chapter, right, that his word shall not go out void, right, but it shall accomplished there too, where he had sent it, roughly paraphrasing, man. You know, so the Lord, when he ultimately, sets up his prophets, right, to speak about, the downfall of that current rulership or the pestilence and war that's ultimately going to unfold, and you best believe, right, those things that the Lord has those prophets saying, hey, they're going to happen, man, that they're going to take place, Let me grab this. This is Jeremiah chapter 28 again, right? And I think it's verse 9, right? It says, the prophet which prophesieth of peace, when the word of the prophet shall come to pass, then shall the prophet be known that the Lord Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua have truly sent him. And see, again, right? We've been telling y'all, that Jacob's trouble, right, was ultimately going to come to pass. Like we were going to end up being in Jacob's trouble. We were telling y'all that World War III, is on the verge. We were telling y'all that America, is going to go down, right? That these nations are no longer going to be dealing with America. We were telling y'all that for years, right? Starting with the elder apostles, the great millstone on down, right? Elder bishops, elders, Akim, brothers that preach this truth. We've been telling y'all for years that this was going to happen. And see, now it's here. Now it's taking place, right? For so long, you people, kept, fighting against us, right? Kept telling us, no, that's not going to happen, right? You watch all the videos, all the people that came, the scoffers and whatnot, that came up to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, right? Other elders and Akim, right? They'll come and they'll scoff and they'll say, oh, no, you ain't got no proof. No, you're just fear mongering. No, man. Hey, what do you got to say now? What do you got to say now? Now that everything that that we've been telling y'all for years, right? Everything is happening, right? And now we're telling y'all, hey, America will be destroyed, right? We've been telling y'all that for years too. America is going to be completely destroyed via ICBM nuclear missile. We're reading it, and it's going to be these other nations, right, that are ultimately seeing Esau's wickedness, right? They're seeing, the wickedness that he spread in the earth and even into their own countries. And these nations are going to fucking fire on America, man. It says, I just had that precept in my mind. Jeremiah chapter 50. And yeah, this is Jeremiah chapter 50. I'll start at verse 8, right? It says, remove out of the midst of Babylon and go forth out of the land of the Chaldeans and be as the he-goats before the flocks, right? And really, do this spiritually, man, right? We understand that the elect are going to be, the majority of the elect are going to be delivered here in America, man. So you don't want to leave, America, right? That's not what we taught. That's not what we preaching, man. This is why, hey, we could leave America too, man. But see, the majority of the preaching has to be done here in America, man. So there's a job to do, ultimately, man. But this is talking about spiritually, right? But spiritually, remove yourself, from America, man. Talk about, fleeing this place, right? Making haste, right? Spiritually, flee this place, man. Micah 2:10, right? Arise and depart, for this is not your rest, man. Because the Lord is finna bring a great slaughter upon this land, man. Right, verse 9, it says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon, right, an assembly of great nations, right, from the north country, right, which is that the north country is going into Russia, right? Russia is going to be the main player, right, in the destruction, of America. What does it say in Jeremiah? Was that Jeremiah 45? It's like Jeremiah 50. In verse 45, it says, therefore, hear ye the counsel of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, that he hath taken against Babylon, and his purpose, that he hath purposed against the land of the Chaldeans. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitation desolate with them, right? The least of the flock is going into the 1948ers, the small hats, right? The JOOs, man. Right, they're the ones that are ultimately going to be causing, right, these nations to to gather and come up against, America and even Israel, right? Israel's going to get it too, right? Israel's going to be destroyed as well, right? That land's got to be cleansed. But see, the difference between America and Israel is Israel's going to be built back up, right? When we ultimately get delivered, right, and brought back into our own land, right, we're going to ultimately, put the heathens in captivity, and we're going to, build, have them build, our kingdom, man, right? The way that it's supposed to be built up, but America is going to be completely destroyed, right? America will never come back, to the state in which we see in, right? You can look around, all this shit's finna be destroyed, man, and again, it's going to be what? The small hats are going to draw out these nations, man, to do that, right? And we see them doing that now, right? You got these small hats that are over there in the land, and what are they doing? They're coming to, basically committing genocide, and war crimes over there against the Palestinians. And see, these nations, are seeing that, right? And they're like, what the fuck? Like, you're just allowing, right? America is basically backing that shit, right? It's backing, Israel doing what it's doing, which again, all these nations are saying, what the fuck's going on with Israel? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? Right. And a lot of the, the deals and the ceasefires and stuff like that have always especially by Iran or, these other countries, one of their points, right, that needs to be fulfilled in order for that peace deal to go through is that Israel has to stop doing what they're doing. And every single time that there's a peace deal that gets, put into play or some like ceasefire or whatnot, hey, guess what? It always gets thwarted, man, because we're not in a time of peace. We're in the time of war, We're in the time of war, as we read in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter, right? So this ultimately has to come to pass. We're in the time where, World War III, right? Revelations 11:14, it says the second woe was past, and behold, the third woe cometh quickly, and it's coming fast, right? That third woe going into the third world war, which is the war to end all wars, man. This is what's around the corner. These are the times that we are in, right? We understand that there's order, right, to prophecy, right? We understand Jacob's trouble, right? The fullness of Jacob's trouble is where the RFID microchip, right, is going to be made mandatory, and then immediately after that, you're going to have the fullness of World War III, because we're at the beginning of both prophecies, right? Beginning of Jacob's trouble and the beginning of World War III, right? But in order for the fullness of World War III to happen, which is the use of those ICBM nuclear missiles, we understand the fullness of Jacob's trouble has to come, right? The mandatory implementation of the RFID microchip, man. But nonetheless, this is the time that we're in, right? We're watching the downfall of America, man. Call law Yahweh Bashim El Shai, Jumping up Jeremiah 50 and verse 9 again, it says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon, aka America, right? An assembly of great nations from the north country, right? So with Russia, right, there's going to be a conglomeration of different nations that come up against America, right? We read that. We'll come back to this, right? We read that, right, in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, right? Just some of these nations, right, that are going to be, basically on the, allied or on the side of Russia against America, right? This is Ezekiel 38. And I'll start at verse 4. It says, and I will turn thee back, right, and put hooks into thy jaws, right? Who is that? Who is that thee? Where I will turn thee back. Who's that thee? It's talking about Russia, right? When you jump up, it talks about, matter of fact, I'll read it. Ezekiel 38:1. It says, and the word of Yahweh Bashim El Shai came unto me, saying, right, son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, right, the chief prince of Meshech, Tubal, and the prince, and prophesy against it, which is talking about, again, that land mass over there, right, where Russia is, right? That's the land of Magog, that's the land of Magog, which, when you go into the history, right, originally it was, the Japhites, but we understand that Esau, Edom, right, he ultimately takes lands and causes after himself, takes the land, takes the culture, right? So it's really going into, the Russians that are over there today, right? Dropping down to verse 4 again, it says, and I will turn thee back, right, and put hooks into their jaws. I mean, the Lord is ultimately going to, spiritually take hold, right, of these Russians, the Russian president, stuff like that, and bring him back into that Soviet Union type mindset, man, which we see happening, right? You got Russia, right, basically, got their hand hovered over the button. They ready to go. They ready to put, push that button already on America, man. We already know that they basically used a nuclear capable missile, right? And they fired that missile, right, on, Ukraine, right? It didn't have a nuclear warhead in it, right? But it was nuclear. It was a nuclear capable, missile, man, right? So they ready to go. They ready to use that shit, man. It says, and I will bring them forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great sword, a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords, right? They're the military, right? Calling up their military, man. Which is what Russia has done. Russia has, made mention, of ultimately, gathering up their reserves, right? The reservists and whatnot, to go to war, right? It says right here, here's the point, right? Verse 5, it says Persia, right? Which modern day Persia is Iran, the Iranians, right? It says Ethiopia and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, right? Gomer and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee, right? So ultimately going into Turkey, right? All the way to Armenia, right? That's who that's talking about, man. You go into these ancient maps and it'll give you, the people of those times, and what they were called, the land masses were called at that time, man. Right. And again, that's going in, to from Turkey all the way to, Armenia in that area, and all those nations are going to be, again, allied with Russia against who? Against America, right? We're already seeing the fall of America. You had, I think, Mount Rushmore. Trump went to go make a speech, right? And it was hailing so bad that you had all the so-called founding fathers look like they're fucking crying. If that ain't a sign, I don't know what is, man. That dude parachuting in, getting grabbed, the American flag, dude getting slammed down. People talking about they're pessimistic about America's future, talking about it won't last another 250 years. Come on, man. That's the time that we're in. America is finna be destroyed, man. It's already being, spiritually, again, economically, financially, socially being destroyed now from the inside out. This place is done for, man. America is done. Right? These are just some, of the nations that are, that are going to be a part of that, that destruction of America. I'll keep reading verse 7. It says, be thou prepared and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them, right? Because again, right, you're going to have it to where these small hats, the least of the flock, is going to draw out Russia, right? Against, America, against Israel, right? Because again, you got America and Israel, right? You got the number one ally of America or of Russia, right, is Iran. And you see, you got America and Iran going at odds, man, which we understand to a certain degree, right? This is just, a fucking show. You know what I mean? The elites are basically, they're getting themselves, money, right? Because they ultimately thrive, and they get paid, off of war, right? They make their money, in these different wars and stuff like that, man. The death, that's how these devils get their money. That's how they get their riches, man. So we understand that to a certain degree, right? This is, a game, right, that the elites are playing. But at the end of the day, we understand that Yahweh Shemel Shah is in control of everything. And the Lord is allowing this shit to really start to slip out of their hands to where they have no control of what's going on, man. They're trying to set a peace deal. They're trying to do this. They're trying to set up the board of peace. And none of the nations, right, some of the biggest allies of America, they're not even a part of the board of peace, right? The UK, France being the longest ally of America, not even a part of the board of peace, because they're like, nah, you know what I mean? They ain't with that shit, man. They ain't with that shit at all. Again, we're not in the time of peace, but we're in the time of war, right? So I'm going to go back to Jeremiah 51, starting 50 and verse 9, and I'll read it again from the top. It says, for lo, I will raise and cause to come up against Babylon an assembly of great nations from the north country, right? And they shall set themselves in array against her. From thence she shall be taken. Their arrows shall be as of a mighty expert man. None shall return in vain, man. And those arrows, again, are going into those ICBM nuclear missiles, man. Right? If it wasn't, then why do you have, a missile defense system called the Arrow 3 missile defense system? Right? I think they have it over here in America as well as over there in Israel. Right? You got the fucking Iron Dome, over there over Israel. And then you got the Golden Dome that Trump is trying to establish. You're showing you that America, right, is, Babylon, right? Trump setting up a gold image of himself, America being that, that golden cup in the Lord's hand, right? You putting a gold dome over America. I'm showing you, man, and the scriptures is speaking loud and clear, man. The Bible is speaking loud and clear. The Lord is about to destroy this place, man, right? Those arrows, those missiles are finna be set off, and who's going to be able to try to escape them? Nobody, right? What is that? Second Esdras. It says second Esdras Um, the second is 16, I think. I'm gonna try to find it, man, because it speaks about those arrows, man, being shot off. Second Esdras 15, maybe. Hey, second Esdras 15 again goes into it heavy, man. Right, second Esdras 15, verse 28. It talks about, behold, in horrible vision and the appearance thereof from the east. Right, it's talking about again that war that's ultimately going to take place. Right, the valley of Yahweh Shaphat. Right, where the Lord is ultimately again, right, the Lord is gathering, these nations, right, to ultimately fight over there, man. And what's going to happen, right? Majority of those nations are going to be fighting against who? Fighting against America. You know, it says, but there was one I wanted to grab. I think it says in Joel. Let me grab it. Oh yeah, this was fire. Right here, yeah, I'll start right here. The second Esdras 16, and I'll start at verse 11. It says, "The Lord shall threaten, and who shall not be utterly beaten to powder at His presence?" Right. It says, "The earth quaketh, and the foundations thereof. The sea ariseth up with waves from the deep, and the waves of it are troubled, and the fishes thereof also be before the Lord Yahweh by Shemiel Shah, and before the glory of His power. For strong is His right hand that bendeth the bow. His arrows that He shooteth are sharp and shall not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world." And an actual arrow is not going to be shot from one country to the next, right? From one end of the earth until the next. That's not going to happen. That's talking about, again, an ICBM nuclear missile. It says, "Behold, the plagues are sent and shall not return again until they come upon the earth. The fire is kindled and shall not be put out till it consumeth the foundations of the earth." Right. Like as an arrow which is shot of a mighty archer returneth not backward, even so the plagues that shall be sent upon the earth shall not return again. That's right. So the Lord is finna have those arrows, right? Those ICBM nuclear missiles be shot off, man. And they're gonna do what? They're gonna destroy America, aka Babylon the Great, right? We know that by we read the scriptures, man. What they're ultimately going to do, you know. It tells you in Joel, this I think it was the second chapter, right? A flame burneth, in front of them, and behind them, a fire devoureth. Right here, it says, I started verse 1. Joel 2:1. "Blow ye the trumpet in Zion and sound an alarm in my holy mountain." And we're sounding that alarm, right? Through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemiel Shah. We're blowing that trumpet, sounding the alarm, right? It says, "Let all the inhabitants of the land tremble, for the day of Yahweh by Shemiel Shai cometh, for it is nigh at hand." It's around the corner, right? "A day of darkness and gloominess, a day of clouds and of thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. There hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generations." Right, and it's not talking about people; it's talking about those missiles, right? It says, "A fire devoureth before them, and behind them a flame burneth. The land is as the garden of Eden before them, and behind them a desolate wilderness. Yea, and nothing shall escape them." Right. So when these missiles ultimately get shot off, man, when they go to their destination, when they hit down, hey, that land is going to be destroyed. It says, "Yea," it says, "the appearance of them is as the appearance of horses, and as horsemen, so shall they run. Like the noise of chariots on the tops of mountains shall they leap, like the noise of a flame of fire that devoureth as the stubble, as a strong people set in battle array." Right. And again, it's not talking about actual people, it's talking about those nuclear missiles that get set off. Because we know the scriptures talk about, 1,000 right, missiles are going to be shot off, right, which is ultimately like 200 million, nuclear warheads. You know, that's what's ultimately prophesied, right? Really just overkill, right? 200 million, right? It's overkill, right? But see, that's what ultimately America deserves, right? It says, before their face, the people shall be much pained. All faces shall gather blackness, right? These people are going to be scared when they start to hear those sirens, to prepare. But scriptures say that in 1 hour, that this place is going to be destroyed, man. So you're really not going to have time. Where are you going to run to? Talk about the whole landmass, man. From here in Phoenix to the border to try to get outside of America, where we're talking about 5-6 hours. There's no way you're going to be able to get away. Where are you going to go in an hour? You ain't going to be able to escape nowhere, man. Right? It says they shall run like mighty men, talking about the missiles, right? They shall climb the wall like men of war. They shall march everyone on his way, and they shall not break their ranks. Meaning they're not going to just veer off, right? There's not going to be some kind of, EMP that's going to stop them, or someone's not going to be able to tap into them and control the missile. That's not going to happen, right? Neither shall one thrust another. They shall walk everyone in his path, and when they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded. Meaning you're going to try to shoot them down. Ain't going to happen. Ain't going to happen, right? These missile defense systems, they're not going to work. America is that, the city without walls, right? Meaning you don't have no defense, right? It says, they shall run to and fro in the city. They shall run upon the wall. They shall climb upon the houses. They shall enter in at the windows like a thief, right? The earth shall quake before them. The heavens shall tremble. The sun and the moon shall be darkened, and the stars shall withdraw their shining, right? We read that, right? We read that. That's what's coming to America, right? It says, and Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, shall utter his voice before his army, for his camp is very great, for he is strong that executeth his word. For the day of Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, is great and very terrible, and who can abide it? Right? How are you going to be able to escape? How are you going to be able to stand in that day? You're not going to be able to, right? We read that in 2 Ezra 16 chapter. It says, therefore, also now saith the Lord Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai, turn ye even to me with all your heart, and with fasting and weeping and with mourning, and rend your heart and not your garments, and turn unto Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai your power, for he is gracious and merciful, slow to anger and of great kindness, and repenteth him of the evil. Right. So the Lord's saying that this is what's coming. This is what's about to take place. For you Israelites, you so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, hey, the main thing that you should be doing right now, right, is repenting. Right? Repenting, right? Meaning to turn back, to turn away from, to stop following in the ways of the world, man. You read that in 1 John 2:15, right? Love not the world, right? And neither the things that are of the world, man. For the love of the world is, for the love of this world is not of the Father, man. You want to continue to be a part of this world and a part of this wickedness, Hey, well, guess what, man? You're going to be destroyed right along with this place, man. And that's what's coming for 2/3 of these Israelites here in America, man. If you don't perish, right, in the time of Jacob's trouble, in the times to come of either famine, pestilence, right, earthquakes, the storm or whatnot, teeth of wild beast, right, Esau coming in with his sword, and mowing you down. Hey, well, guess what? You're going to eat a missile, man. You're going to eat a missile. You're not going to, if you being a wicked, you're not going to make it out of this place, man. Right? The Lord said he's coming to judge this place for the wickedness, man. Let's grab that. Isaiah the 13th chapter and verse 11. It says, and I will punish the world for their evil and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. So the Lord's coming to ultimately judge the wicked, man. Right? And we understand that the wicked, right, is Esau, Edom, right? Malachi 1:4, right? He's the border of wickedness, right? Esau, Edom is that wicked nation. But see, you got Jakes, you Israelites, right? That continue to follow these devils, man. Which makes you wicked, right? What does it say in Jeremiah 5:28, right? That their deeds have overpassed the deeds of the wicked, right? Meaning to some degree, right? You got Israelites that are more wicked than Esau, Edom, And the guy said to to a certain degree, right? In certain instances, right? We understand that Esau's the wicked, man. He's that vessel unto dishonor, man. You know, and the Lord is ultimately going to judge him, right? As we're seeing him do now, right? I'll drop down to verse 13. It says, therefore I will shake the heavens and the earth. So like, therefore I will shake the heavens, and the earth shall remove out of her place, and in the wrath of the Lord Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua, and in the day of his fierce anger, right? And the Lord's going to do that via these ICBM nuclear missiles, right? Scriptures talk about the earth shall reel to and fro. You know, it's going to be a great destruction upon, you know, upon America, man. You know, it says, and it shall be as a chased roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. They shall every man turn to his own people, and flee everyone into his own land, right? And you got more and more people fleeing America, right? Fleeing this place, man. It says, everyone that is found shall be thrust through, and everyone that shall be joined unto them shall fall by the sword. So you Israelites that want to continue, you know, to see this place thrive, see these devils thrive, hey, the Lord is going to destroy you, right? Though they be joined hand in hand, right? The wicked shall not go unpunished. You know, you want to be right along with these devils? Cool. You're going to get the same punishment as these devils, man. You know, and that's the bottom line, man. The Lord ain't playing with this fucking place, man. We've been given all these different signs. We've been given all these different, you know, confirmations, right? That this place is going down, man. Why would you want to still be a part of a place that we see, right, is circling the drain, man? Quickly, right? As you start to do the drain, man, and, you know, you're higher up in the water, you know, it goes slower and slower. But as you continue to get closer to that drain, you go faster and faster and faster. And we're seeing that shit getting faster and faster and faster. This place, Babylon the Great, is done, right? And you wicked Israelites that want to ultimately continue to try to save this place, hey, well, you're going to be done too, right? This is Isaiah, and we going through the book of Isaiah right now, man. You know, it's Isaiah 30 and verse 1. It says, woe to the rebellious children, saith the Lord Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushai, that take counsel but not of me, and that cover with a covering but not of my spirit, that they may add sin to sin, right? You got that American, you know, Roman, you know, type, you know, spirit upon you, man, and you trust and believe in that. You know, you want to continue to celebrate these high holy days and be, you know, in the spirit of this wicked, you know, spirit of wickedness. You know, it says that walk to go down into Egypt and have not asked at my mouth to strengthen themselves in the strength of Pharaoh and to trust in the shadow of Egypt. You trust in this place and what it can offer you, you know. But see, again, that's going to be your downfall, you know. Where the scriptures say the turning away of the simple shall slay them, right? You don't want to hear this truth, and that's going to be your death. It says, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh be your shame, and the trust in the shadow of Egypt your confusion, right? Meaning you're going to sit there and be confounded. You're gonna be like, well, I thought this, you know, this devil was for me. I thought America, you know, is this great place, you know. But the Lord, Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua, right, has been telling y'all for years that this place is wickedness. This shit is evil. This shit is wicked. The shit that be going on here in America, this shit is wicked, man. And the Lord is gonna destroy it, man. The Lord ain't playing. So you Israelites that have, you know, have heard this message, you know, that hear this message, you know, if you don't repent and you don't turn back to Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua, it's going to be too late, man. You know, we understand that right here, it tells you in Zechariah, right? Zechariah chapter 13 and verse 8. It says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, that land talking about America, right? So it shall come to pass that in all the land, saith the Lord, 2 parts therein shall be cut off and die, but the third part shall be left therein. And that's 2/3 of you Israelites are going to perish here in America, man. You're going to die via ICBM nuclear missiles because you want to continue, right, to hold on to this place, you know? But you're going to have the elect, right? They're the ones that are going to be left, right? They're the ones that are going to make it. They're going to be delivered in these times to come because they trust in Yahweh B'Hashem Yahushua. Oh, Salak. Salak, man. But yeah, you know, you wicked Israelites that want to continue, you know, to be a part of this world, right? To hold on to this system and Esau Edom, and you're gonna perish right along with this place, man. You know, you're going to perish right along with it. I'll read it again. Zechariah 13 and verse 8 says, and it shall come to pass that in all the land, talking about America, right? Saith the Lord Yahweh Bashmiel Shah of hosts, two parts therein shall be cut off and die. 2/3 of you Israelites here in America are going to die, right? But the third part, right? But the third shall be left therein, you know? Meaning the Lord Yahweh Bashmiel Shah is going to leave, a remnant, right? And the elect of the nation of Israel, right? And deliver them. Everybody else is going to be destroyed, right? It says, and I will bring the third part through the fire and will refine them as silver is refined and will try them as gold is tried. They shall call on my name and I will hear them. I will say it is my people and they shall say the Lord Yahweh Bashmiel Shah is my power. You know, again, that's talking about the elect of the nation of Israel, right? Those are the ones that are going to be delivered in these times to come. Those are the ones that are going to be delivered from the noise and pestilence and the snare of the fowler. The snare of the fowler being what? Esau and his trap, right? That snare being a trap, that the fowler being Esau Edom, right? Which the ultimate trap is what? This ICB or the RFID microchip, man. You know, that's a straight up trap. Do not take the RFID microchip, man, right? Because the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah will destroy you, right? There's no repenting, right? When you ultimately take it, there's no repenting of it, you know. And then again, the noise and pestilence being the firing of those ICBM nuclear missiles, man. You know, the Lord Yahweh Bashim Shah is going to deliver the elect out of both of those situations, man. You know, tells you in Jeremiah and Job. I think it was that the 5th chapter, Job chapter 5. In verse 19, it says, he shall deliver thee in 6 troubles. Yea, in 7, there shall no evil touch thee. Right? That 7 goes into that final, trouble, which is what? That those ICBM nuclear missiles, right? It says, in famine, he shall redeem thee from death and in war from the power of the sword, right? So again, there's the duality of the Lord, right? The destroying and the death, of, the wicked Israelites, but yet the deliverance, right? And the salvation of the elect, right? The righteous Israelites, man, right? It says, thou shalt be hid from the scourge of the tongue, neither shalt thou be afraid of destruction when it cometh. At destruction and famine thou shalt laugh, neither shalt thou be afraid of the beasts of the earth. For thou shalt be in league with the stones of the field, and the beasts of the field shall be at peace with thee. So the Lord is ultimately going to sustain and take care of and protect the elect of the nation of Israel, right? Leading up into that destruction, right? And when the destruction ultimately comes, those missiles be fired off, a Lord will be a part of the elect, and we're getting beamed up into those chariots, man, right? And everyone's going to see the deliverance of the elect, man, right? As you read in Wisdom of Solomon, the 5th chapter, Wisdom of Solomon 5 and verse 1, it says, then shall the righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such as have afflicted him and made no account of his labors, which we're doing now, right? We're standing in great boldness, man, against this damn devil, man, And people, hey, they don't make account, they don't make an account of, the labors, right? The work that we're putting out here, right? The truth that we're telling, you know, even, when we're in the world, when we, at our jobs and stuff like Esau don't, pay attention to that, man. Esau don't care. Or we're just fucking, pawns to this damn devil, man. That's okay, man. Everything that we're telling you, right? Through the spirit and power of Yahweh Shemiel Shai, everything's coming to pass, man. So, hey, at the end of the day, whether you hear or forbear, we're going to continue to tell the truth, right? It says, when they see it, they shall be troubled with terrible fear, and they shall be amazed at the strangeness of his salvation so far beyond all they looked for, right? These people are going to see the salvation of the elect, being delivered into those so-called UFOs, right? The so-called UAPs, so-called alien ships, which we know, right? Rightfully so, are called the chariots of Israel, right? The chariots of Yahweh Bashim El Shai. Got the angels, right? And the vehicles, that they use are called, chariots, man. The elect are going to get beamed up, man. Their bodies are going to be changed. Everything's going to be different, man. It's not going to, hey, there's going to be a righteous rulership that gets set up, man. And the rulership that gets set up is going to be, an everlasting rulership, an everlasting rulership. It's not going to be what we see here, man. It's going to be righteous. It says, on, let me grab this. It says, because it goes in when you go into Daniel's, right, the second chapter, it goes into that statue, right? It goes into the statue and the different rulerships, and the last one being this current rulership that we see, right? The feet of iron, right, mixed with clay, right? And then what? After that, after this last rulership, what you got? You got this great rock, that was ultimately carved out, and it cast down that entire image, broke it into pieces, right? Which is Yahweh Shai, when he comes, he going to destroy this place, man. He going to destroy this place, take Esau, Edom out of power, and set up a righteous rulership in their stead, right? I'll start at verse Daniel 2:44, and it says, in the days of these kings shall the power of heaven set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed. Right? Scriptures talk about in Isaiah the 9th chapter that talking about Yahweh Shai, that the kingdom, right, shall be upon the government, right, shall be upon his shoulders. This current rulership is not upon the shoulders. Yahweh Shai is not ruling in this current, age, but he will be in the one to come, right? It says, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, but it shall break in pieces and consume all these kingdoms, and it shall stand forever. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it break in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, the gold, the great power hath made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter, and the dream is certain, and the interpretation thereof sure. So this is what's prophesied to take place, and you best believe it will happen, man. We're looking at the downfall of this current wicked and evil rulership, and there's going to be a righteous rulership that gets established afterwards, and we understand that. We just read it, right? It's going to be an everlasting rulership, man. Right, starting with Yahweh Shai, King David, the rest of the 144,000, right? That's the governing body of the kingdom to come, and then you got the rest of the elect, of the nation of Israel. And then eventually the 2/3 Israelites, right, are going to come back to the loins of the elect, man, through reproduction, right? The Lord said, what, be fruitful and multiply, man. You're going to have all those Israelites that come back, that perish on this side, they're going to come back to the loins of the elect, man. And you got Israelites that are, that are in the, the spiritual realm now, right, in the heavens now, they're going to come back as well, They're going to come back as well. They're going to come back into everlasting rulership, man, everlasting rest, peace. Body's going to be changed, right? Everything's going to be completely different, man, for the nation of Israel forever. I did a lesson going into yesterday that Yahweh Shai is going to bring peace back to the nation of Israel, man, right, when he shows up. We don't have peace here, man, but soon we're going to have peace, Well, that's all I wanted to grab, man. Lord will, it was edifying. Lord will, straight to the point. I'm going to give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Merchak, Wadash, double honors to the elder apostles, the elder bishops, the elders of Great Millstone. Until next time, Shalom.